we knew right from the beginning that if we didn't have rules and governance, you basically wouldn't have a proper association. I mean, they're the simple guidelines that everyone has to adhere to. So it took us a while to get a qualified person that would be able to put the rules and governance together. The amount of time that person put into drafting the rules, I mean, we got to 9 drafts. The 4 directors of Beefplan, the company, were the people responsible for signing off those rules. At a later stage, I decided to allow the National Committee to have input because I wanted everybody to be inclusive, and I thought it was important that they were happy. So the final draft was draft 9. The 4 directors signed off, and the National Committee, even on the night that we were signing them off, Owen Donnelly sent an email of 5 or 6 different points he wanted included. So under no circumstance can anybody say that everybody's opinion wasn't taken on board. It was agreed within those rules that county elections would happen and be finished no later than the 15th of January. And within that, there would be an AGM then called of all the counties, which would feed into a national committee of 26 individuals. And that was the plan that everybody agreed with. But unfortunately, within about a week of that, the National Committee wanted to put in amendments to the rules. We had drafted within the rules, and I don't want to go on too much about this because it's important. We had drafted within the rules that we could have a 3-month situation where if people wanted to bring in, once the National Committee was set up, if people wanted to put in amendments, that there was a vehicle there to do so. There was a lot of reservations as to the way the business was being done within the National Committee. I think initially when we signed off on the rules and governance, we had a path that I thought we were all going to follow. And then within a week or 10 days, members of the National Committee were saying that they wanted amendments put into the rules and governance. They called a meeting of all the counties, which in normal situations you have to go through the chair. And because there was underlying issues regarding Tipperary, I had said, as the chair, I had said that I wouldn't attend the meeting. But anyhow, the meeting went ahead anyhow. And within that meeting, they had drafted amendments that they wanted added to the rules and governance, which is crazy territory because they'd already agreed to the rules and governance. There was already a procedure there if they wanted amendments, which would be through the new National Committee, and now suddenly they wanted to just change them a week after they were drafted. That cannot happen. And as a result of that, it was decided that they were no longer fit for purpose. It was the National Committee was only ever a temporary committee. It was put in as a temporary 3-month basis. But I felt that Beefplan was unravelling. I felt that the rules that we all agreed to suddenly were not what the National Committee wanted. I think the decision, as I keep harping back to this because it was a huge decision at the time, for them to decide to email English retailers without consulting with their chairman, I think was a major national mistake, because potentially that could have damaged the livelihoods of tens of thousands of farmers through lack of exports to England. You can't play with decisions like that. You've got to make those decisions carefully and democratically.
Was one thing that happened was that there was a lot of personal attacks that were taking place on social media from members of that national committee on other members. And instead of dealing with the business of sorting out farmer problems, a lot of time and energy was being put into personally attacking other people on social media and digging up dirt on other people and then going and using that information against them, in many cases wrongly and false information, which was very damaging and hurtful to people who were trying to work on a committee. Now, the reason it was set up, a group of people were set up basically that wanted to hold democratic elections and to go along with the rules and governance and have their elections democratically. So a group of people came together for that purpose. Now it really was an interim committee to get to the point where we had a democratically elected national committee. Now the reason it was called the silage testers was it was a name that had basically stand out. Like on my phone, a lot of other people's phones, there was a lot of beef plan committees, beef plan this and beef plan the other. So silage testers was just come up as a distinguishable name that had stand out, that people could pick out easily on their phones for no other reason. Now, what happened was that group of people were set together to hold their democratic elections and get the new national committee in place. It was done for the right reasons, to basically save beef plan and to get a democratic national committee fully elected under the rules and governance. So that's the reason for it. Now some people have made accusations that it was for to take down the national committee. Like the national committee was only a temporary committee. They weren't supposed to last by August. Certainly on the 15th of January they would have been timed out according to the rules that they themselves signed off on. The other thing that was mentioned was it was to destroy beef plan. Like the opposite is actually the truth. It was the founders of beef plan coming together with other members to basically save beef plan and to reinstate the beef plan that was originally there, basically a grassroots organisation that was inclusive of everybody, all the stakeholders in farming. Okay, so the counties that basically advertised their elections went ahead and held their elections. Now what actually happened was the group of people who didn't announce their elections sort of got organised and decided they were going to try and disrupt these elections. And what we had in Tipperary was a group of people turned up and tried to prevent the election taking place. Like they contacted the hall and they tried to cancel it on numerous occasions. They rang the radio station and said that the meeting was cancelled. And this annoyed and upset the particular counties that were organising their AGM, because they had to work to ensure that those elections actually went ahead. And even though they'd done everything democratically and followed all the rules, for the safety of the members, they had to organise security and had to contact guards to make sure nobody got injured and the members were safe. And a large mob of people did turn up at some of these meetings, including Tipperary, and including a director, Alan O'Brien, who had signed off on the rules only a couple of weeks earlier.
Yeah, this was a mob, Eamon. This was a mob that turned up. And under no circumstance can any association allow a mob to take over. These were non-Tipperary members who came down purely to disrupt the AGM. The AGM was being held in a democratic way. Any Tipperary member was allowed into the hall, but they had to have security because we'd already seen from Galway that they completely disrupted. They had to abandon the AGM, and this is crazy stuff. So the Tipperary committee took a decision to have security and to just warn the guards that potentially this firecracker could happen, and it did.
I suppose the point to remember is that the people organising these AGMs, they had no choice but to organise security, and the reason they had to organise security was that part of the group basically who hadn't advertised their AGMs had orchestrated these mobs to turn up. So that's an important point. I know Owen Donnelly has been in the media recently, and he said it doesn't say much about an organisation if they have to have security and guards at meetings. But the point he's missing is that it was because of those counties, which he was one, that they didn't actually hold their AGMs or get their AGMs over the line. Those people orchestrated these mobs to turn up. So I think it's a bit ingenuous to say that it reflects badly on the AGMs, security and guards being present, when the actual truth is the reason they were present was because these mobs were trying to disrupt these AGMs.
So the Tipperary Committee AGM has actually become quite controversial, so I want to clarify the facts. The rules of governance were published on the early December. We decided to have our AGM in early January, and so we went about it given the correct notice and looking for nominations, and all went after Christmas. Then everything went according to plan, and we had organised the venue in Holy Cross in County Tipperary, and it was to be held on Friday night, the 10th, I think, of January. The previous Wednesday, 2 days before, there was a debacle in Galway at their AGM, where a crowd of people infiltrated the AGM with their own microphone. So we decided that in order that there wouldn't be a repeat of this in Tipperary, that it would be safest to protect our members and ourselves as the committee to have security staff. So we enlisted security people who were trained and insured and knew their business, and we informed the Gardaí and Thurles that there may be an incident, a security incident. So we talked to them and they understood. So if they were phoned, that was important that they knew. So the meeting, during the day of the meeting on the Friday, Dermot O'Brien, who was the regional chairman of Beef Plan, contacted Tip FM to say the AGM was cancelled, and there was a lot of messages on social media to the same effect. So the meeting went ahead. We were there in the hall about 7 o'clock, and we organised ourselves, and security people were there. We had a list of members, and only Tipperary members were entitled to be there, plus a few people that we had invited to work to be tellers and to help with the running of the AGM. So a situation arose. I was actually at the back of the hall when somebody approached from another county, and they were told that they couldn't attend. So then a lot more people came quite quickly, and the security staff decided they'd call the guards. So the guards came, and they were negotiating and talking to these people outside. And again, I insist, everybody that was a member of Tipperary Beef Plan were entitled to be there. So after some time, there was, I felt almost as if I was trapped in the hall, because it wasn't safe to go outside. The doors were actually closed, and there was negotiations going on, sadly. But so after some time, the AGM began, and it took place, and there was a new committee elected, and everybody was safe. And the guards were still there at 11 o'clock that night when I left the hall myself, because we had a cup of tea for everybody that was inside. And that's the facts. And it was, Owen Donnelly, said it was a disgrace. Unfortunately, we had no choice but to secure ourselves and the hall and the farmers.